and all that kind of stuff. So we were on the phone for quite a bit, and I made that decision to do it that other way because of the way the seller was. So it worked out pretty good. And how did I meet this wholesaler? Is he had his wife had a house in Detroit that they used to live in that they owed a lot of money to, that they didn't want it anymore, and it was a nice house, and I was gonna buy it seller finance. I was gonna buy it seller financing, pitched the deal. He said fine, he liked it, and I was gonna pay him so much a month, and then I was gonna sell it, to a homeowner, and I was gonna be making money in between. And then he met his wife. She didn't want it. She wanted out of it, but we couldn't get out of it. Hang on, I don't know why that's ringing. Is that anyway? She wanted out of it, and you hear that? You hear that beat?
Yeah.
All right, that might be me. Anyway, she wanted out of it, but what happened was I set him up with a property manager who is gonna rent that house for them. I never got it seller financing. I tried, but never did. And now they have a rental property, and he's happy, and he wanted to learn about wholesaling. You met him, Carson and Michael. Alex Riley. You remember he came up to Flint one weekend with me. I was driving with him. Anyway, you guys
Gotcha.
met him once. It
I'll
was
just say yes.
all right.
Yep.
Cool. Power squatting up. So, Todd, I think this might be kind of a good segue into our topic tonight, like acquisitions, right? Because, I mean, you touched on it while you're talking to the guy, right? I mean, a big thing you were fishing for, obviously, is the condition of property. Like, what were some of the other key things that in the conversation that you were looking to get from the seller, right? There's some couple of key things. What were those?
About the property, is that what you're asking? The key things?
Right. Yeah. Like say like think of like the four pillars, right? Like you were figuring out the condition, and like what were some other like,
Yeah.
if people don't know the four pillars, like explain the other three things that you went fishing for talking to that seller.
Well, of course, their timeline to sell, pretty easy to get. That's a good one, so I was definitely the timeline, and this guy's timeline was like now. He wants to sell right now. Just he lives out of state, and he's just tired of owning a rental property. Okay, and of course his ability to sell. He's owned it. Looked like a clean title. I got the condition of the property, and the main thing was working on that price, and so that's it. And of course, if there's a renter in there, the things that I want to really know is the renter paying on time? Are they up to date or not up to date? It doesn't mean we won't buy it, but it makes a difference. Mostly in Detroit, you're not going to get proof, and it might be other places, but I know Detroit. That's my where I work a lot. Mostly in Detroit, you're not going to get proof of payment history and things like that. It just doesn't happen. So sometimes they say they're up to date, doesn't mean it's always true. And you want to know if it's on a month-to-month lease, or if not, when is the lease end? And the reason why, this is a 4-bedroom house and it's $800 a month. I know this house should be renting for $1,100 a month on a nice house for 4 bedrooms, Section 8. And that's what someone's going to do, maybe even more. So I need to know that information so when I sell it.
So Mike, go over like so the first phone call you have with a seller, like I was talking about earlier, you can pre-qualify them really quickly to tell if it's going to be a good deal or not. And we were talking with another wholesaler earlier this week. You need to make well over 100 calls to get a deal. Depending on the list you're calling, it could be 1,000 calls. Like that's not unheard of. That's not even bad. If every 1,000 calls you get, you make a deal. You 1,000 calls a week, that's 4 deals a month. That's not bad at all. So just for example purposes, but you have to be able to get on the phone with as many sellers as possible and then immediately qualify them. Are they even worth talking to? Because a lot of people will waste their time, get off the phone with them if they're not worth talking to. So Mike mentioned this. Talk about the 4 pillars of motivation that you want to look for, like the 4 points to hit on your
Yeah.
first call with your seller.
Yeah, totally. And there's almost in a way 5, and I'll explain why. So when I get on the phone with a seller, basically before I even talk about like the condition of the property or really even the motivation, I'm just interested to know the timeline, right? If they're not ready to sell in the next 30 and really anything after 30 days, then I'm just going to follow up with them, right? Because if they're not good to go right then, in the next couple of weeks, then I'm just going to put them in my follow-up sequence and I'll tell them I'm going to give them a call back. So that's really one of the first things I want to find out, because if they're not ready to go in the next 30 days and I just go through everything and ask them all these questions and it just turns out they're not even really ready to sell, then there's really no sense of me throwing out a number, trying to give them an offer, because it doesn't matter what I do. They're not really looking to sell right that very second. So timeline, and then of course you really need to figure out the motivation of your seller, right? If they're not a motivated seller, you can do everything in the freaking book to try to make a deal or get them under contract, but at the end of the day, if they're not motivated to sell, they're not motivated to sell. So that's another thing that people get super caught up on, is they're like, man, I was talking to this person, but and I had a great conversation with them and we talked about this and that, and I built a ton of rapport, but I didn't get the deal. And it's like, well, if there's really no pain, there's no reason why the person needs to sell to somebody like you at a discount, then, there's not going to be a deal made. So always timeline, motivation, and, of course you want to figure out the condition of the home, right? Because that's going to help you formulate your offer, and also give you an understanding of, if the seller gives you a price, where that price is coming from, so you can kind of figure out if they're like in la la land or if they like are in reality, if they understand that their home needs a lot of repairs. And then working to always get price out of the seller is key, very, very key. And you can ask it a couple different types of ways. Like, so Mr. Seller, like, I know I'm the one that gave you a call, but you said you were looking to sell. Did you kind of like any idea what number you were looking for? No, not really. Well, even if it's just a ballpark, Mr. Seller, it's not something I'm gonna hold you to it, right? I'm like, well, I'm not really so sure about that. I said, is there no number in mind that you really, really were thinking about? And if I just can't get the number from them, I will just give them a range of, say I'm trying to be in like the, like 10 to 20 range. I'll go something like, so would you say you're in like the 5 to 10 range, or are you kind of in like the 20 to 30 range? Kind of trying to like guess or figure if, again, if they're really truly motivated, and if you guys are, kind of seeing eye to eye, because then you'll have to, because if they're a little bit more than what you really need to be at, then that, okay, I need to really like educate this person on why I'm about to give them an offer that I'm about to give them. If they're like kind of more in that range that you're looking to offer, then you understand like, okay, great. Like, we're already kind of seeing eye to eye. So, you can maybe be a little bit more like I won't say aggressive, but more, you're closer to a deal then. Another thing though, guys, like the 5th like pillar, if you want to call it, is you really need to figure out who the decision makers are, right? You might be talking to somebody and you might be assuming that they are like the one and true decision maker, and you might do everything and figure out all the 4 pillars, and they hit you with, oh, I need to talk to my wife, or, oh, I need to talk to my husband. So you want to also make sure that's like a key thing to figure out, right? Because you don't want to give like all all your ammo away, and then you find out that you're not even talking to the right decision maker. So, but the 4 pillars are the key, like the 4 pillars of motivation why, you know, somebody would really even be interested in selling. So, and we'll go more in depth of like, you know, questions to ask to actually figure those out. So, I don't know, Carson, Todd, you guys want to chime in on anything?
I just put it in the chat what the 4 pillars are, and we didn't make these up. Like, these are from big like wholesale companies that have coaching programs, and everyone across the board agrees on figuring this kind of stuff out. You know, and the point of this is just you don't want to miss up on a deal, and you don't want to waste your time. So you can, you know, if that's why you ask for the price. If it's a ridiculously low price, then you want to get on it really quick, and you'll know that it's a good deal. So if they don't want to sell in a year, then it doesn't matter how much money they want. You know, follow up with them in a year. They're going to want to do the price in a year anyway. So that's what I would do on your first call. And literally, you can just cold call a seller right now and just say, hey, my name's Carson, looking to buy a house in your area. Are you interested in selling? Until you get a yes. Once you get a yes, just go down the line. How soon do you want to sell? Tell me about the condition of the house. The biggest thing about these 4, especially starting out, you don't want to ask yes or no questions. So don't ask, do you want to sell in a month or 2 months? Ask, you know, what is the best kind of timeline that you would like to sell in? Because then they'll start talking and they'll just lay stuff out in front of you, and you'll be able to listen to that and gain from that. And it's kind of an awkward conversation when you're just throwing questions at them. You'll feel like you're interviewing them, and they say yes, no, yes, no. Just leave it like just any other conversation. Just have a conversation with them. Casually ask about these 4 things. If they have one of them is really good, then it can be a deal. You know, if the house is in terrible condition, then there's a good chance they're going to be negotiable on price. If they need to sell in a week, but they want too much money, well, guess what? If they have to sell in a week, they're going to sell for whatever they have to sell for. So don't just disregard the price at that point. Their motivation. You know, I had a seller, my 3rd deal was this person's daughter was having a kid, and so their first grandkid, and they wanted to move to Florida to be with their grandkid, and it was happening in like a month. So they were like, we want to get down there as soon as possible, and it was getting cold. They wanted to move down to Florida. So just get those, and you'll be able to tell if it's a deal or not. Asking people why they want to sell is great. Will you walk away from a deal if they're not motivated? No. So it depends. Like, if they're not willing to sell, then yeah, I'm going to walk away. But we've had plenty of sellers who, and this isn't super common, but you'll have people who don't need to sell, but maybe it's just, I'm kind of sick of being a landlord. I've been doing it for 10 years. Like, maybe it is time to retire, but I need 10,000 or I'm not going to sell. So they do have some sort of motivation. Like, they're going to have some sort of motivation, but not like I need to sell right now. That's why you ask about the other 3 pillars. If they're just like, well, I don't really care, but then they say, I only want 10K for the house, you know, they might not be motivated and have to sell really quick. It's a bad situation, but it might still be a fantastic deal. So you don't want to just discard somebody because they're not super motivated, you know. But if you can tell they're not motivated on the phone, and we all do this, we just get more direct with our questions. Just get right to the point with them. Or, you know, I don't really need to sell. I might sell in 2 years. Okay, how much do you want for the house if you were to sell today? 100K. Okay, click buy. Talk to the next person. So that's why you figure out all 4 pillars, and then you can kind of just judge based on that if it's worth following up with or not. But usually, if they're not motivated at all to sell, then they just don't want to sell, and it's not a deal. But just get the other 3 pillars as well. You kind of touched on this, Mike, like how to get the price from the seller. I'll let you touch on it again, because I hear Mike cold call, like we work out of the same office, and he's asking the same questions over and over and over, like he's like a robot. And so he's got this stuff locked down, what to say, what not to say. And figuring out a price is really important from somebody, because you don't want to find everything else about the house, go look at it, and then they want way too much money and you just wasted your time. So just rephrase how you kind of worded that to find the price, Mike.
Yeah, so I kind of do it, like two different ways. I mean, the majority of the time, like, because when I'm talking to somebody and I'm going through like the 4 pillars, for instance, and we get to price, like that entire time, like I'm looking at the property, I'm comping the property while I'm talking to them. And if I keep, asking again, like open-ended, like, so what would you say you're looking to get for the property? What kind of number did you have in mind? What number makes sense for you to sell like today? And if they're like, well, you're the one that called me, you must have an offer in mind. You must have a price in mind. So I say, I'll be honest with you, Mr. Seller, like without actually coming and seeing the property, put my eyes on it, it's hard for me to put like one solidified price. So what I do, is I'll look at comps, and if I'm looking at comps and like if this estimate, and again, you don't live and die by this estimate, guys, but if you have got a seller who just really wants to hear a number, and if you're looking at the comps and the estimate is somewhat close enough, I take this estimate, I do my calculations, and whatever I get as my max allowable offer, I then will subtract another 10,000, and then also like add a 10,000. So that's my range. So say my max allowable offer is 50. So at most I'd like to be at 50. I'll say, sir, Mr. Seller, I'm between, I would say about 40 and 55 to 60, somewhere around there. I don't know where exactly that would put you or what you were thinking, right? And again, that's just kind of like gauging the seller, right, to see exactly where they're at. Because if they come back and they go, okay, well, that sounds all right. Like I was thinking somewhere around there, in like maybe the 50 to 60 range. You're like, okay, well, so now I know we're not quite seeing eye to eye, but you know that if they've got motivation and they're willing to work with you, that you're close to having a deal, right? So kind of gauging them. So that's typically the way I ask it to them. If I don't, if they're not like super motivated, or I haven't really gone through like all the 4 pillars yet, I will kind of throw out that more of like, I don't know exactly what you want to call it. Maybe not so accurate range, but again, just trying to gauge them where, I might just, again, ask them like, say I think it's around the 50 mark. I might say, well, let me give me an idea. Are you in like the 30 to like 50 range, or in like the 50 to 60 range? And again, just trying to kind of gauge where they're at. So it's like 2 different ways to kind of do it. I'm a big believer, like, I don't know, every time I call somebody, my script changes a lot, right? So again, it's just kind of playing the call by ear, and every seller is a little bit different. So so those basically the 2 different ways I kind of try to gauge the seller and try to get a price out of them. Again, I don't give them one solid price. I give them more of a range, right? So then I'm not strapped down to that one singular number, right? So
Yeah.
that's the way you can kind of get out of actually just blurting out one number. So
The one thing you did, Mike, that was good is that instead of you saying I would be, I done this before, and just listening to you, I made a change. Instead of saying, Mrs. Jones, instead of, or I'm usually buying houses in this area for around the $40,000 to $45,000 range. Is that something you would consider? Now I'm giving her a price. I like the way you said it, Mike, just now. You say, what are you thinking? Are you around the $40,000 to $45,000 range? So the difference is, I'm not telling her what I would offer her. I'm trying to get what kind of where she's at. There's a big difference, because if you give them an offer, some people are just going to take that offer and then go shop it around, to other people. If they think Mike's going to pay 50,000, and they're going to talk to, because they might be getting these calls, a lot, or the postcards or whatever, they might call someone and see where they're at. They're just shopping your offer around. So I don't know if I think that is a good little change that I'm gonna start doing, because I usually do, if I'm at the point of giving someone an offer and I want to offer $40,000, I would tell them, I'm probably gonna be, and let's say I might pay up to 50,000, but I might want to start lower. I'm gonna tell them I'm gonna be around the 38, 40,000, somewhere in that ballpark. Is that something you would consider? Not anymore. I'm gonna do it the other way.
Yeah, I just try, I guess, my hardest. Like those asking those what questions really like opens up the conversation.
Yeah.
And it really like it puts it back on the seller. Like I'm just constantly trying to like put it back on the seller and kind of give the seller like the impression that they're in the control, because we like to have control typically as humans, so if you can kind of put someone in the driver's seat, and again put everything back on them, and again that just opens them up to you, right? You again like asking, it goes in even in like to condition, right? You can ask, and they'll just open up to you about things that you might not even thought about asking about. If you just say, well, kind of catch me up to speed, like what is this property to you, like what's the story about this property, and that just opens it up to conversation, and that's how you can get a lot of like juicy details about the condition, just having them tell you about it. So
Yeah. Yeah. And, Carson, Michael, myself, we're making calls all the time. I know I'm going to start doing more live Facebook calling because I think it makes me better. And I'm sure if anyone's in the Flint area, in the White Lake area, we, come on up, make phone calls with us. And you can hear Mike talking all day long. And on the phones, you can make phone calls and learning, and we can jump on the phone and help you if needed. Or, we might hear, you might help us in some way. So it's an open invitation.
Yeah. Yep. For sure. Yeah, I mean, I like what Todd put in the chat too. Asking the seller, it's all about getting them to talk. You want them to say everything to you, because then you don't look like the bad guy. Asking the seller, if this house was in HGTV standards, what do you think it would sell for? And a lot of times, sometimes they're spot on, 120, 120,000. And then, you can ask them, or if you already asked them what they wanted for the house, bring that up and then ask them again. So if you think it's only worth 120 fixed up, and you just told me 5 minutes ago, and be direct with them, that it needs 20,000 in work, 100,000 is really the best they're going to take, because I have to make a profit as an investor, right? And they might just say, yeah, I'm not taking a dime less, I'll fix it up myself, and then it's not really a deal. But a lot of times, if you just kind of work the numbers based off what they say, just rephrase it, they might come down on their price. And I mean, I've asked the seller on the first phone call multiple times how much they want for the house. They might start really high, we'll talk for a little bit more. So that's really the best you could do for the house. And then ask them again. So that's the best you could do for the house, especially if they're being unreasonable. Because I've had sellers tell me, house needs 50 grand in work, it's worth 100 fixed up, and they want 60 grand for it. And so I'll just say it right back to their face. So if I need to buy it as an investor, I'm going to buy it for 60, put 50 into it, and it'll be worth about 100. Does that sound like a good investment? Well, no. And then, just kind of gauge if they're serious from there. Another thing that we talked about, us three, before we started this, was just repeating what the seller says. Just like something in their head. If they know you're listening to them, it makes them way more responsive to listen to you, because they feel like they've been being listened to this whole time. And that's how it should be. You should be doing really 10% of the talking starting out. They should just be talking about the property. But, if they tell you it needs a new roof, oh, okay, it needs a new roof. And use your tone of voice to your advantage too. If they say it needs a new roof, they say it needs 50,000 in work. Oh, you think it needs 50 grand to fix up? Okay, all right. And just kind of repeat back to them what they're telling you. And then once you do that, you can throw out another question that's kind of based off what they've been saying. So It's pretty simple, and it really just takes practice. The best way to do it is to get in a room with somebody else who's experienced at cold calling. When I first started cold calling, I started with Todd, and I would sit down in a room with him, and it was like 3 other guys, just depending how many people showed up. And I would just cold call in front of them, and it was like really, I was nervous, and I didn't know what to say. But every time I said something, after every call, Todd would be like, "Don't say this, don't say that." And it was like, it was uncomfortable for me, but it was perfect because you're not going to learn and understand sellers until you start talking with them. And it's uncomfortable at first, but better to learn what to and what not to say to get the results from people who are actually doing it. And I used to also, I said, my Uncle Todd, he's the boss. Every time somebody said something I didn't know the answer to, talk to my uncle, and I would hand the phone to Todd because we were in the same room because I just didn't know what to say.
You made 3 or 4 appointments, I'm telling you, and
Yeah.
right away.
And Todd put him on speakerphone, and then I was there listening, like, oh, okay, he answered that when they said that. And then once you get comfortable with it, it's fun. Like we all are. There's no nerves when we're cold calling. Like it's exciting, and when somebody cusses you out, we just laugh about it. Like, you can make it a good time, and you just have to get out there and start doing it. And there's no perfect script. Us 3 are all opposites in how we talk to sellers. Like it's crazy.
Yeah.
But we use a lot of the same little stuff. We just all have our own styles, and it all works because we're out there doing it. So don't think that you need to become a master at cold calling before starting, because you literally can't get better at cold calling unless you're cold calling. So, and that's the best way to find deals. The last thing we're going to talk about before we take questions was how to structure your offer. So, you kind of get a price from them, get condition from them. The way we all do it is we go out and look at the houses, and then we make an offer based on that. Or what you can do it like that, or you can make an offer before you even go out and see the property. If it's a really hot deal, you can make an offer, sign a contract with an inspection period, just so you know you have the deal locked up, and then go out there and verify the numbers.
That's
So,
that's what you did today, right? And
I should have. I was talking to Mike about that on the way home, but I didn't actually sign it before I went out there. But I told Mike, I was like, I should have just
the one in
signed
back.
it. We drove out there.
Oh, you were out in Detroit today?
Yeah, man. Yeah, we just got back.
I was there too.
There you go. I know. We were. I was thinking about swinging by White Lake, but I knew it was gonna be late.
Yeah, no problem. But Mike, sorry to cut you off, Carson. Mike, you did the one in Pontiac like that.
Yeah.
Just recently. Yeah, exactly. So we're doing some like that, and some, the old school way is to go out there and do it. But sometimes if they give you the opportunity and you can lock up that contract, you could always renegotiate later after you see it. But the faster you get a contract, then the seller, if someone contacts them, most sellers mentally, well, no, I got to deal with Carson. Some sellers will not do that, but most sellers are going to say, no, I got a deal. I sold it, this and that. Right. So go ahead, Carson. Sorry, man.
No, yeah, that's 100% true. So, you can do it however you want. We like to just get out in front of the sellers, but we've all done it the other way. I'm sure we've all contracted deals before seeing them. Just get as much information as you can from the seller and make sure it's a deal based on what they told you. And then if they lie to you, then you have room to renegotiate. If there's a huge foundation issue they didn't tell you about, you don't have to feel bad for trying to go back and get a $10,000 price reduction because they weren't honest with you about it. But we usually go out to the property. Like Todd was saying earlier, take a million pictures. We're taking 50 to 100 pictures of every single house we go inside. Good, bad, ugly. Just take pictures of everything for when you're going to sell it. You want to be able to send that to your investors. And then from there, if you don't know the numbers, it's okay. Either bring somebody who does with you. When I started out, and I know a lot of you guys are in the beginning stages, I would send the pictures to Todd and another guy that I talked to while I was at the appointment. And then I would call them. I would say, hey, Mr. Seller, look, I got to go run my numbers, figure out what this thing is worth. I would call them call Todd or the other guy. What do you think this needs in repairs? This is what we're dealing with. They would kind of give me a good idea with that. Or if they knew the area, they would just tell me based off the pictures, this is what you can offer on that house. That's exactly what I did with Todd today in Bagley. I literally called him in my truck after I took all these pictures. I sent him all the pictures. So I didn't even know how to structure the offer because I'm not familiar with the area. And I said to the seller, like, look, I need to talk to my partner Todd because he's the numbers guy.